This is Rachel Terry. She's running for the Attorney General seat here in Utah.
Right.
So I hope that those of you that haven't gotten a chance to hear about her, we do plan on having you out to the county soon. And hopefully, especially after caucus, I hope to get you in front of delegates at least 3 times. So it will be via Zoom town halls, or we'll do actual meet and greets, convention, of course. But thank you for being on today. And I'm sorry that it's taken a while to get in touch with you and to set something up.
No, this is wonderful. Thank you for letting me be on with you. It's a lot of fun to be on your podcast. I'm a big fan, so thank you.
Oh, have you seen some of our shows where we kind of can go off the rails sometimes?
Yes, I was actually talking to a couple of Tooele residents about the podcast, and it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. So, AG, tell us why you belong in that seat, and also give us some of your background, because it's not a job you can just run for. You have to be pretty much involved in the law and understand it. I mean, there's so much that goes into it.
There is a lot that goes into it. So I'm glad you asked. So a little bit about me. I live in Bountiful, so I'm not too far away, and I've been practicing law for 20 years. I have 2 13-year-old kids, twins, 1 boy, 1 girl. They're pretty fun. And my practice has been pretty broad. I've had a really great career so far, for these past 20 years. I spent 7 years in the Attorney General's office doing civil rights litigation, a lot of cases you would have seen in the news representing universities and school districts and other state agencies. And then I've been the state risk manager for the past year plus. No one knows what state risk management, because you only need to know what it is when you need it. So what it is we provide all the insurance, do all the claims and all the things that, puts broken things back together. That's what we do. When it gets broken, we put it back together. And I work really closely with the Attorney General's office, because the Attorney General's office is our law firm for the state. So when the claims come to us, if they rise to the level of litigation, then we work with the Attorney General's office on that litigation. And I've loved doing that. Before I got into working for the state, I worked for a law firm for 8 years. It was called Fabian and Clendenin. Now it's Fabian Bancott. That was great too. I represented a lot of coal mine operators, businesses, banks, all kinds of entities. But this is my favorite work I've been doing, working for the states and with the school districts. And not to continue a big, long run-on sentence, but the reason I got into this race is because the state of Utah is at a critical point. We have a lot of issues going on, and the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General specifically, is at the forefront of all of these big issues, because a lot of them can only be solved through lawsuits. Right. And that's what I know, and that's what I'm good at. And I wanted to make sure that whoever is at the head of that office, whoever's the Attorney General's office, is 100% committed to fighting for Utah and has the actual experience to do it. And I do. I've actually been in the courtroom. I've been the one writing the briefs. I've been the one in the weeds, the legal weeds. And it's time to really focus on the attorney part of Attorney General instead of the political part. And I think for too long we've missed that, and we've gotten caught up in things. And I really want there to be a real focus on the attorney part. And that's what I've been doing. That's what I'm passionate about. And that's what I want to continue to do.
What's one of the first, the biggest thing you want to tackle when you first win? What's the first target?
The first target.
In the center of your dartboard?
Center of my dartboard is federal overreach. Now
we want to keep this G-rated. Don't go too hard into this.
Super excited when people start talking about, states' rights and federal overreach.
State sovereignty has to be a #1 issue. I know that this is Speaker Schultz's focus this session, and really providing the support to do this. We have seen the Biden administration in every possible way overstep states' rights. And in Utah, to a lot of people, this idea of federal overreach, it's really abstract. They're like, the federal government overreach. And what I want to say is, okay, let's break it down. Let's talk about what it means to your life. Let's say you're a parent. What it means is the federal overreach in schools.
Right.
If you're living in rural Utah, think of San Juan County, think of Kane County, think of Garfield. Over 90% of their lands are owned by the federal government.
We're 88%. We get that.
Are you at 88 in Tooele?
Yep.
Mhm.
And we're the second largest county in the state.
And you're growing like crazy.
The fastest growing in Utah, actually.
And so you can't navigate and manage your growth issues when you can't walk outside your door without worrying about a federal issue. Like,
Rachel, the Attorney General's office, from what I understand, has been preparing for this very battle at the Supreme Court. And what I recall is under Governor Herbert, when I actually asked him this issue, when are you going to fight this and get us our lands back? He said he needed the president, the House, the Senate. And once we had the three, because we only get one bite at the apple, but that
Yep.
our state attorney is ready to go. Our AG is ready to go. So I know millions of dollars was spent fighting already and in prep. Are you ready to hit the ground running? And do you need the approval from the governor to actually take this issue on? Or do you need, Scott Sandel just put a bill out that is kind of, again, focusing on Article 11 or 10 and getting states' rights and being able to do that. Do you think this is something you could hit the ground running on, or do you have to wait for a governor?
I'm 100% ready to hit the ground running. Will be most effective when the governor and the legislature are aligned, but I think that moment has arrived. What I'm hearing from the legislators, every event I go to, this is a top priority, and it needs to be a top priority because I live in Bountiful. I'm on the Wasatch Front. We don't think about this the way everyone outside of Utah County, well, even Utah County thinks about it more. Salt Lake County, Davis County. We just don't think about it in the same way the rest of the state is. But we need to, because just because I live in Bountiful doesn't mean that it's not impacting my life too. These public lands issues, when you have right now, today, the federal government is trying to shut down roads across Utah. They're trying to say we can't even come onto the land within our own borders. That's unacceptable.
Right.
And they're trying to say you can't go onto land that we've typically used for energy exploration. You can't go onto land for recreational reasons. My family really loves to hunt. We like to go ride on our razor on these public trails. And they're saying, no, Utahns, you can't use the land in your own borders. And they're also trying to say that
the Fed shut down all those trails down in Moab.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Just last year, they shut them all down. That was a big draw for the state. I mean, Moab was built on that.
Moab was built on it. It is a driver for Moab. And one thing that I think is really interesting about that is rural Utah is really having to pivot and be dependent on a recreational economy. Now, nobody asked them if they wanted to be a recreational economy. I think if those residents could have chosen, they would have said, we want to keep energy exploration and development. We want to keep mining. We want to keep grazing and ranching and farming. But the federal government has decided for Utah what our economy should look like. Now, we welcome those recreation dollars. We love our national parks. We love visitors. But they shouldn't get to decide what kind of economy we have. And
those are only positive economies in boom times. Those are failures in depressions and recessions. And things
well, I
that we
think
don't know anything about.
I mean, we have this big, beautiful coal seam, and we can't use. And I love that President Biden says we should all drive electric vehicles.
It's asinine.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because how are electric vehicles powered? They're not powered by solar panels or wind.
Well, how are those engines?
Coal.
And those engines are also mined, and they destroy small countries where they don't have special restrictions, so they can be mined by children and they can tear apart. Africa, they can lose their beautiful landscapes all in the name of our environmentalism. And it's a joke. It's laughable.
Well, you can sure sound good on the world stage when you support it, though. So
I know and I appreciate your question is, am I ready to hit the ground running? I am well versed in the law and how you go after these things. I have been talking to the attorneys who are working on them so that I am prepared day one, that we're ready to go. They've been working on this lawsuit for a long time. And I'll tell you that I was skeptical at first when I heard about some of the plans for the lawsuit. But as I talked through it with the attorneys, I'm like, this makes sense. And we have to at least take a stand and make the effort. We have to do it, and we have to do it now, because once those trails are closed, once those grazing rights are gone, once we can't access our own mineral rights, then the moment's lost. And we just can't wait anymore. And the governor and the legislature see that, and they're supportive.
So, and that also, we've got a pretty even keeled Supreme Court now that might actually be beneficial to us. It would help to have a president supporting it as well. And we are in an election year. How many people would you say are in your race right now?
So there's 4 of us that filed.
And that's, they're not all Republicans.
There are 4 Republicans. So there'll be 4 of us on the Republican tickets that have to be decided. And then there's someone from, it's like the United Utah Party, and then a Democrat that are all running.
So 6 total. And out of those 6, you've got experience at the AG's office already. You've worked in risk management, which is highly important for a job like what you're doing. I don't know if people realize it, but the AG is about checks and balances across the state. And you already have been talking about this potential legislation and then helping it work on the world stage as far as getting our lands back.
Yes.
What else sets you apart from the 6 in the seat, if that's not enough?
Yeah.
By the way, you look way too young to have been in law for 20 years and have 13-year-old kids. So whatever you're doing, amazing. That bountiful
thank
weather.
you. That's the best thing I've heard all day. I'm going to tell my kids that because they keep telling me I'm old.
I have a 13-year-old too, and they will age you quickly.
Yes.
You are doing it wonderfully.
Well, thank you. One of the things that sets me apart is I am 100% committed to the public service part of this office. This is not a political stepping stone for me. I don't want to be in the news. I'm not running because I want to be in the news. I want to be the most boring attorney general the state has ever seen. I'm a suburban mom lawyer. What I want to do is get into the office and be in the weeds of the law. I'm not doing this so I can be in the news. I don't want to be on a private jet. I don't want to be all over the place. What I want to do is I want to be in the office. I want to be accessible to people. I want to be transparent. My communication style is to tell people what I'm about, like what I'm thinking, why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm very direct. Some people don't love that, but I like to tell people who I am. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I accept that. And I've come to terms with that. Like, that's the beauty of being in your mid 40s is you're just like, I am what I am, like take it or leave it. And I think that's what the state needs now. It needs someone who wants to be in the fight for the sake of the fight. Someone who wants to lead out, someone who wants to represent the state, get in the weeds, I want to get my hands dirty and I want to do all the things because I'm really passionate about the issues. I'm really passionate about the people doing the heavy lifting. I have relationships with people in the office and some say, well, can you be objective? How can you clean up the office if you have relationships? I'll tell you, the office is doing amazing work.
Yes.
The work of the office is getting overshadowed by people's perceptions of other things unrelated to the work. And I think about the investigators who are investigating child pornography. I can't imagine doing that every single day. That would be so heavy. I think about the prosecutors who are prosecuting violent crimes, domestic abuse, putting drug dealers and gang members in prison. That's heavy work. And then the people who are doing criminal appeals, that is some dark stuff. And the people in my own former section of the Attorney General who are representing universities, state agencies, and school districts, that's a big lift. And they're working super long hours. A lot of people think, oh, government lawyers, they're not that great. They're not working that hard. No, they are working like crazy for half the pay they could be making in the private sector. And so what I have there is I know what it means to lift for the heavy lift, and I'm ready to do that with them. And
So
I want to do it. Yeah.
I was wondering, see, I've got a passion too, and it's law enforcement. And my father was law enforcement 41 years before he passed, and that was huge. And he considers the attorney general as the top cop in Utah. And for the law enforcement community, they want somebody who's going to back them, who is going to be dependable and show up when it's needed. And with all these new fentanyl cases and, the border cases and migrants and things of that nature that affect every single one of us. So how is your relationship with law enforcement? Have you had any good meetings with the FOP or the sheriffs?
Yes, I met with the sheriffs, and I loved that group. Presenting to them, they're all business. I love it. They don't mess around.
They're a lot of fun too. Don't let them fool you.
They're so
They
fun.
know how to have fun.
What else? I love how many belt buckles and cowboy hats were there. That's what I grew up with. My dad had a whole Stetson collection and a lot of cowboy boots. I rode horses and spent my summers wandering around throwing things into ditches. So I have a particular affinity for rural Utah and our sheriffs. And then I have actually worked with law enforcement on cases. So part of my job at the Attorney General's office and now is to work with the Department of Corrections and Utah Highway Patrol. I have a lot of respect for the people who are doing that work. And again, that goes to who's in the weeds and who's actually doing the heavy lift. It's not the politicians, it's the people in the offices, it's the correction officers, it's our highway patrolmen who are engaging with some really hard work. I love what they do, and they need to know that they can rely on their Attorney General.
Right.
I want to show up for them every day. I want to be present for them. I want to defend them. I want to work collaboratively with our sheriffs and our chiefs and our prosecutors across the state. I want to be a partner to our county attorneys because they're doing amazing work, and they deserve to have the support of the state as they take on big, heavy cases.
Right now, like in Salt Lake County, and some judges are actually not letting you prosecute, and cases are getting just kind of thrown out, and mental illness cases where, we can't, I'm speaking from personal experience, they can't even charge a person. And once they do get that person, they let them out on their own recognizances when it's obvious this person is a problem for society. And as an AG, like, how can you affect the actual, there's an urgency to stop this. We need to hold people accountable, and they need to be arrested and tried and put in prison if that's where they belong, because it feels like there's a revolving door happening in some counties, and people are getting let out or not even being prosecuted at all. And where you get, I know law enforcement officers who have spent so much time, energy to build a case only to have it just, the prosecutor's ready to go and a judge is like, nah, or the prosecutor's like, no. And so all these hardworking men and women are just sitting there going, well, there goes the neighborhood, because these guys are just going to get out, or these girls. And one of our deputies is from Tooele County is commenting in here, and he says, cartels are happening in Utah.
They are.
And this is an AG's office issue.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, what can you do from the AG's office to maybe go after some of these elected prosecutors in counties, Sam Gill, that are doing nothing? Or maybe they'll go after hardcore a police officer, but they won't go after the Summer of Love rioters who cause damage and fear into the public. Like, he's very selective. It feels like it's been weaponized. The DOJ has been weaponized. A lot of our local cities have prosecutors that have been weaponized.
As the Attorney General, would you be able to go after district attorneys? Would you be able to enforce over them? Because what I understand is different levels work its way up through city, then district, then state. But for victims,
can
you reach down and help on lower levels when victims aren't getting aid from their district attorney?
Yeah, I have heard this complaint specifically about Salt Lake County where the police departments don't feel like the cases are getting prosecuted that should be prosecuted. And we need to evaluate that. We need to make sure that justice is being applied equally, because these new criminal justice policies and picking and choosing who we're going after, it's not creating confidence. What it's
No.
creating is a sense that there's two different sets of rules, those for one group and a different one for the other group. And when we do that, when we lose confidence in our criminal justice system, when we lose confidence in our elected officials, when we lose confidence in our institutions, we're all in trouble.
It's a
Because
good thing
that's
none
what-
of us know anything about losing confidence in any of those departments. Anyway, sorry I interrupted you.
No, we have to regain the trust and confidence of, like, we as the Attorney General's office, we in the law enforcement community, we need people to know, to believe, to see, and because they're not going to believe us if they can't see if they can't see actions, that the law applies to everybody equally. You know, equal justice under the law. That's how it has to be. And if you did a bad thing, it should be prosecuted. We also need to push back on some of these criminal justice reforms. We have experimented with it, kind of trying to be soft on crime approach, and it's not working. It's not working.
It breeds more crime.
It breeds more crime, and we have seen that play out over and over. And so we have to make sure that we're tough on crime. Now we have to do it. We should do it in a kind and compassionate way. But putting people back out into our communities that shouldn't be there, that are violent offenders, that have sold fentanyl to our children, they don't belong back in our communities. It's not safe. And getting back to the core values of equal justice under the law and also being tough on crime is where we need to go.
And Rachel, the same Fred Swain has mentioned, child sex offenders get light sentences and they're in and out of jail with new victims each time. This is what my question is. And please educate me, because as the top cop, that's how I picture this job. You are overseeing law enforcement and you are overseeing the prosecution, and then you are overseeing all the rights and options for the citizen. So you're fighting for the citizen, you're fighting for the law enforcement side, and your whole job is to be a servant of the people. And so it's against when a police officer can't get a sex offender in jail because they keep getting out. And that's a problem in the prosecutor's office. And then when, judges are not giving harsh sentences, well, that's a problem in the judges. So where do you fall into what you do as the Attorney General to kind of right that ship, to help at least give the people, representing the people, like sex offenders with multiple offenses getting out on these slap on the wrist charges only makes victims out of the rest of us. So what is it you can do? And this is I'm just wondering what actually you can do. Or is it up to the most local level to fix?
Yeah, that's it. So one of the things you said I want to start with is, what is the role of the Attorney General in this? And the mission of the Attorney General is to uphold the law, state laws, the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution, and to protect Utahns in Utah's resources. That is the mission of the Attorney General. And it gets to the question you're asking. It is fundamental. So there are certain cases that are handled at the Attorney General's office that are specific, are moved there. There's discretion between what goes to the Attorney General versus the county attorneys versus cities, because cities handle some of their own criminal prosecutions.
Sure.
Our smaller cities don't have their own prosecutors, and in fact, even some of our own counties have to hire county attorneys because they're so small. They don't have the same needs as other counties. What I can say is that the Attorney General, as the top cop, as a top law enforcement officer, has the ability to direct the investigation and prosecution of certain crimes. In addition, when there's a conflict of interest between the county attorney and those need to be referred, then the Attorney General's office can be a partner there to take on some of those. Sometimes counties will go to other counties to prosecute cases with conflicts, and sometimes those can come to the Attorney General's office. What I'm committed to doing is making sure that as we are working with the counties and in the cities, the Attorney General can set policy. The Attorney General can influence statute. The Attorney General can work with those stakeholders to make sure that the legislature to make sure that the laws are in line with Utah values. And the best thing that the Attorney General can do with respect to that is build relationships with those stakeholders, make sure that the Attorney General is showing up all throughout the year, engaging with the legislature so that our laws are the laws that reflect Utah values, that are protecting Utahns, and then taking on the cases that will make sure that people can see that we're actually executing on those. And when it comes to those who abuse children, those are the highest, like, in my opinion, those should be the harshest punishments, because when those adults abuse kids, they end up often becoming abusers themselves.
And
so
there's no rehabbing.
There's no rehabbing.
They've not had successful rehab of sexual offenders that actually hurt children. It's like, you've got to keep, they can't see the light of day. I'm sorry, but there's no sending them to rehab and they're going to not do it again. There's got to be stiffer penalties for those people, because they commit it and then they end up creating some of the same. So
it's horrible.
Thank you for that. I know that I have had the privilege of being at the AG's office on many occasions. I absolutely adore the people in the office. They work so hard and they are tireless. And I know a lot of them they don't get a lot of limelight, but they are pretty incredible people. And I can't see her. We had one person say, Fred Swain also said, for many years, the AG's office has taken the lead on deadbeat dads. And that's something that, I mean, he's in law enforcement, but I know that there are some issues that affect Utahns. And, deadbeat dads might have been a big thing in Texas years and years ago, and they did it there. But in Utah, it could be a new issue for us. And they're actually getting it down. Now, I would also like to know if the AG's office could do something for the dads that don't want to be deadbeats and are getting ignored by judges because they're dads. They want rights to their child. But again,
equal rights for all. Doesn't matter if you're a dad or the mom, it's equal rights for all.
You got to love the kid more than you hate the other person. And if it's a safe place, that's good. The office is a pretty big deal, of course. I'm just curious what you think about this. A lot of people in the Republican Party have brought this up, that they don't love the idea of the LG's office running elections. Some people have said we should have a Secretary of State or something, or that elections should be overseen by the AG's office to make sure that and I'm just wondering, have you had anybody ask you or bring that up?
I did have one person ask me what I thought about having a Secretary of State instead of the Lieutenant Governor running elections. I think there's a lot of merit to that. I haven't done the pros and cons weighing of it to see which one is better. But what I think is important in that conversation is making sure that our elections are free and fair and transparent. Because again, this goes to, we're lacking transparency, we're lacking some trust. I love
Sorry
that.
about that.
Oh no, I have a similar thing. It's like, I hope you guys don't hear my kid or my cat coming through here.
You just heard my kid.
Our producer is eating a Pop-Tart.
I love that. You're like, no.
Bro, he's not wearing headphones, so he can't hear.
You know what?
We're hearing.
I support his food choice or her food choice. Because Pop-Tarts are delicious. So with their elections, if people don't think that they're fair and that they're accurate, then once again, we lose trust in our institutions and without trust in those institutions, our society, our government, our country is in a lot of trouble. So as a state, we need to do all that we can to build confidence in those elections, however we can do that. Now, in terms of having it housed at the Attorney General's office, we want the Attorney General to be the one who's executing the law. So we want the Attorney General to be counting any ballots or anything, because they're the one who should be acting as a check and making sure that whoever's in charge of elections is following the law. That's crucial. And again, it all goes back to trust. Do people trust their Attorney General? Do people trust their Lieutenant Governor? Do they trust their governor? And being as transparent and open as direct with people as we possibly can will build that trust.
You know, the Attorney General's office had the PSN task force, and I assume they still have it. My father was lieutenant on that task force, which basically is Project Safe Neighborhood, and it's doing exactly that. It's putting people out in the community, law enforcement, who are working with communities who are creating, they're creating their own watch groups. I started one in my neighborhood, and basically you're empowering the community to be the eyes and ears and to watch out for crime. You're partnering with those local law enforcement agencies so that those people who are involved in the neighborhood watch groups have a direct line of communication with law enforcement. And I think that does so much to build trust. And then when you have the AG's office who's offering that task force, I think that's something very positive that came out of the AG's office that I would hope that it continues, because we need to build trust between the citizen and law enforcement. We need to build trust between the citizen and their electeds at the most local level, and knowing that there could be an AG out there who is saying, I'm here to assist if the citizen needs me. I'm here to assist if law enforcement needs me. But the bottom line is we want to create safe neighborhoods, because it just grows out from there. Whether it's rural or downtown Salt Lake, it just grows from there. And,
I love that. I love that.
Have you seen the PSN task force, or is that no longer around?
I have not seen that task force, but from my own experience, what you're talking about is the best policy, where there's a much closer connection between communities, law enforcement, and those in elected office. It's because it's hard to trust people that you don't see, and you can't see what they're doing. So someone asked me the other day, they said, how will we connect with you? How will we let you know if you're not doing a good job? Now, traditionally we say, oh, well, you can just not vote for me the next time. I don't think that's good enough.
No, because we're living daily lives now.
Yep, it's daily lives now. And I like having the feedback. I want to hear it. And one suggestion I have is making sure that there's, like our congressional districts have community outreach. They have people who receive phone calls from people and help with specific issues. There has to be a place where people can connect and give feedback to the Attorney General's office. They need to be able to say, I'm having this issue. I'm concerned about this. What are we doing here? And actually being able to engage and respond. I would like to have town halls as the Attorney General, like go out to communities and say, tell me what you're seeing. Tell me what you need, because that's the only way that we're going to, like, they have to see what I'm doing. And, I tell my staff now, you have to tell, if I need you to tell me if I'm making a mistake, because you can't always tell if you're messing up, because you're plowing ahead, you're in the weeds. And I tell them, I need to hear from you. I tell them metaphorically, my campaign staff will be mortified. I'm going to share my analogy. I tell them, I'm like, if my skirt's tucked into my tights, metaphorically or literally, you better tell me instead of letting me walk around with my behind exposed.
Because it is an embarrassment to not only the office, but the state. And with nowadays, it could go viral, whatever you're doing. And then you're going to get attention that you never wanted. And it actually eliminates the good you're doing just by the potential embarrassment. I have to say, please sign me up first. I would happily host your town hall meetings for you.
Thank you.
I'm always hoping for any of our state electeds to come out to our county and talk to our people, because we've got smart very common sense people on both sides. I mean, we've got all sorts out
Yeah,
here.
don't judge
Independents.
Tooele because of me. Just
Our independents, we have tons of independents. We've got Democrats, Republicans, constitutionalists. We've got them here, and they're so engaged, and it reflects in how well our county's doing. But I know that our sheriff's hands get tied sometimes. I know that our county prosecutors' hands are tied. And if there's a way, I mean, mental health right now is a huge issue. And
Huge.
counties can't afford, one, to house them or to help them, or two, we can't build mental health facilities. There's not enough funding. And so how we have to kind of look at the state maybe getting on board with it. And then they're told, well, the state will fund such and such. And then if they change and legislature changes, they can't. You're tying the hands of all these different, now maybe Salt Lake City can handle it, but a county like ours may not. And yet it doesn't make the need any less for criminals who might have mental health issues. So there's got to be some policy or something that you as an attorney general are sitting down with the Sheriff's Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, local county elected prosecutors and mayors or county councils, sheriffs though, for sure.
For sure. Yes.
That we can create something, because you're the one that's going to go to the legislature and say, look, somebody put a bill in here that accommodates the rural communities that do not have mental health for these, because we don't want to throw people in jail when we have maybe a potential to put them in a hospital. It's a better use of money and safer for the community.
And I want to tell you, I love Tooele County. I love what you're doing out there. When I was working for the League of Cities and Towns, I got to go be on a couple of listening tours. You have tremendous challenges with water. You have tremendous challenges with land and with law enforcement, with drugs coming through from Nevada. But what I love about those meetings is your community shows up. The people in the community show up. They care. They're engaged. They care about their neighbors in a way that gets lost in some of the other parts of Utah. And it's the grassroots that are really going to keep Utah such a fantastic place to live. And the Attorney General needs to show up in those places and really make sure that Tooele and San Juan and Garfield and Millard and Uinta are being heard just as much as Salt Lake and Davis in Utah. And I am 100% on board with that. Those are my favorite places to visit anyway.
I appreciate that. And I have to tell you, Sean Reyes was a very dear friend. He's still a very dear friend of mine, but it was something that he would show up. If I invited him, he would show up. And I appreciate that in anybody who wants to be our voice. And so he, along with other legislators that would come up and show up. In fact, he would show up to police events that we were having and work very closely with the FOP and, the DEA. And I mean, it was at a conference my father hosted where the DEA first talked to law enforcement of the Western states about fentanyl. And Sean Reyes was there with members of his office. And it was, we're here, we're listening, tell us what you need. And it was such a great marriage of what normally government turns into a cluster. You know this. The government gets involved. So not only are you part of the government, but you're also part of law enforcement, where law enforcement shouldn't make mistakes, at least if they can help it. And so to marriage that office, it's got to be one of the toughest things. And to be there for the people, be there for the law enforcement is the people. They are the thin blue line that protects us from evil. But the office has to work with everyone. And so what do you, I love that you want to do town halls. And so does one of our commenters who says, town halls, how refreshing. Mm-hmm. And sorry, they also ask, who do you believe is your greatest opponent in this current race? If you believe you have a greatest opponent.
There's not one candidate that I said that would say this is my biggest opponent, because what I've learned from the conventions is that you can't discount anybody. And I am not doing the signature path. Two of them, there's two other candidates who are doing, and one candidate who's getting signatures. Derek Brown's getting signatures. And
He
so,
is?
yeah,
The former chair of the state Republican Party is getting signatures.
yes, he checked the box.
Okay.
I did
Well,
not.
if you've seen the show before, as a party chair, I do not exist without the county caucus convention system. I believe in it fully, and I truly appreciate anyone who believes in the delegates and who trusts them to decide. If you can get their vote, then you get on that ballot for the primary in a way that signatures don't. And that is, you actually have to sit down and talk to people and tell them why you're the right person for the job. I did not know that. I should have looked that up.
Okay. You wanted to, you have to
appreciate that.
click on the website and look at the boxes. I've been a precinct chair and vice chair. I've been on the state central committee. I've helped organize the Davis conventions, the state conventions. I know how much work it takes, and it is thankless and invisible, and it is a lot. There's a lot of feelings people have when they come into when they get involved in the party. And I used to not know quite how to manage that, but I love it now, because I love that the people, they're showing up. They're actually showing up. They're willing to do the work. I see the convention as a hiring committee. So, when you go to hire someone, and you don't usually elect your attorney to represent your company or whatever, but this is how we're hiring our attorney general. And to be clear, I think the attorney general should always be an elected position. There should always be a little bit of space between the AG, the governor, and the legislature, because that's how the attorney general can provide the best advice, is by being
checks and balances, right?
Checks and balances. So I see this convention as the hiring committee. We've identified who we want to sit on that hiring committee. Just like when I hire employees, we create a committee. We decide who's on it. They vet the person. They look at their resume. They sit down and they interview them. And then they say, this is who we recommend, because that's their job. And the delegates who are coming to convention, they're my hiring committee. If I get on that stage, and if after all those phone calls, they don't think that I'm the right person for the job, then I shouldn't get it. I should go back to what I was doing, and I love what I'm doing. So I'd be perfectly happy to go back.
You're probably making more money. You can claim your hours. You can work around it. Wow. You're crazy enough to throw your name in the race. You know what? I'm going to say it again, and I've said it on the show. You're somebody that understands the process. We have a lot of state delegates that watch our show. And I've been able to, get people excited about joining. And even the show host he had before we were politically, political head trauma, Dave, he became a state delegate and got to know exactly how much work. I mean, here he is going to all these meetings, and here he is asking people who want they want to know stuff about their issue, and they see your face and they see how you answer, and they get to know you, and they get to know everyone. It's not like they just sit down with Rachel and decide that's our person. No. And they're the closest thing you have to knowing what a small group of people in a county actually believe, because I think they really represent the voices, at least publicly. I can't tell them how they vote, at convention, that's all on them. But for a really good delegate to do their job, they have met every candidate. They've talked to their neighbors about said candidates, and their neighbors have been able to share the issues that matter to them at caucus, and they can go from there to do and choose the best one. I have so much respect for someone who is being fiscally conservative and saving the money of going out to get signatures. We all know that for big seats, it's hiring a group.
It is a lot of money. It's about $300,000. I'm like, nope, that doesn't make sense.
Right. And then 2, you need to appeal to 4,000 people. And then once those people trust you, then you're appealing to the entire state. But you get the trust of a small, finite amount of people. But those people know the job they're supposed to do, and they represent these clusters of their precincts. I really, really appreciate the fact that you aren't getting signatures. And I think that needs to be, I, as a chair, will celebrate that at my convention. I will discuss it at my Lincoln Day. I think that it's highly important,
I agree.
especially for a Republican, because the dual path is what, and to be fair, most of us were advised when the dual path started, we should to give our candidates the best option to do both.
Right.
But then we realized, and I know I did, as you probably did somewhere along that line, when I'm sitting in front of my delegates at a county convention, we're doing nothing but tradition. When every person has gotten signatures, we're just doing a tradition. None of these people's work mattered anymore. And to me, that broke my heart.
And most of those signatures are gathered along the Wasatch Front. And so everywhere outside of that gets neglected.
Right. You don't see people going door to door in Tooele County. We're too far apart.
And I do love that about the convention system. You know, again, having organized the last 2 Davis County conventions, that was a ton of work. It is a ton of work to get people to come to caucus and run that. So, and then it's a ton of work to run a convention, and it's a ton of work to be a delegate. I hope I don't scare off any people. It's like, it is work. And I'm telling everyone everywhere, I'm like, you should go to your caucus. Even if you don't want to be a delegate, that's okay. Go to your caucus, because you'll get to decide the kind of person who is going to go to the convention. When you don't show up, you don't get a complaint. It's like, if you didn't help make the dinner, you don't get a complaint about the dinner. Like, I'm sorry. You've got to show up. And that's something that I've been committed to doing in the party, serving on the state central committee, helping organize conventions. Organizing the state convention was such a massive undertaking.
Did you work with Sean Milne on that?
Yes, he's awesome.
He's a very dear friend of mine, and he somehow gets voluntold to do it. And yet he's the first person to say, I've got the best people helping me. Because, I mean, he did it for COVID, you know, last minute, or with under Carson Jorgensen, when they had all planned to go one place and everything changed, and then the whole committee had to change. And it just, again, sometimes it's the same people that show up. But you know in your heart that those people have people behind them that trust them to represent. And, you know, to me, it's so important. I feel so blessed to be the party chair of a county that trusts me enough. But at the same time, I'm only as good as the precinct chairs and vice chairs that show up for central committee, and especially for those delegates who do the work, because it's a passion for me. But I appreciate the fact that you're absolutely right. Those who show up, they're the ones who will get things done. They're the ones who will give us bad leadership, but at least they're trying. The people that don't show up are just, they'll take what they get, right?
Get what you get. Don't throw a fit. Now, Holly, I've really appreciated, as I've talked to people from Tooele County and elsewhere, they've specifically said to Tooele, like, that your voice matters because they trust you, that they listen to you and they trust you. And it's because you show up, and you, like, that's half the battle, is showing up and caring. And again, that just goes to kind of beating the drum on, we've got to show up. We've got to be transparent in how we're doing things so that the trust continues, because without the trust, it doesn't matter how good I am at legal work. It doesn't matter how much I can talk to you about Title IX or Section 1983 lawsuits or state lands. It doesn't matter. If you don't trust me, then no matter what I do, I'm not going to be supporting this nation and this state. So it is my style to be transparent, direct with people. I accept that I may not represent everyone's views, but I want to at least explain to them who I am and why I think the way I do. And again, when I go to convention, if that group of delegates says, you aren't for us, we're not going to recommend you for the next, step of this interview process, I'll say, I get that. Like, I'll be sad, but that is fair. I saw something about the mentally ill and places for them in
Yeah.
prison.
Yes.
So
Big deal.
our deputy, do you want to read this
He
one?
says there are hardly any state hospital beds for Tooele to send people to. It takes a district court judge to order after several months of pushing. Then it takes months to get an open bed. We used to have an insane asylum. Is that the proper language still? I think
called
it's
the state
loony bin.
hospital now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
state hospital. I'm sorry. In the US, but they mostly got closed. Those closings pushed the mentally ill onto the street and into jail.
That is true.
That's 100%. That was a long process to close them. It's state behavioral health hospitals. So we can't call them loony bins. We can't call them pillow walls. We can't call them what?
Our call screener, Dwayne, says that she knows the party caucus system works, and it was a delegate
how
is
it
a big
works.
deal. You know how
Yes.
it works, and he says thank you, Rachel.
Yes.
Well, thank you. It is
And-
a big
and
deal.
everyone.
That is a lot of time and commitment. A lot of Saturdays that are used for that. To address the mental health issue has become even a bigger issue now because we have more people struggling with mental health now.
And
I
more
don't think-
drugs.
and drugs. I think they're all
And
tied
different
together.
drugs.
And so I've had I've toured the prisons before, Gunnison, Draper, and the new one. And there are a lot of people who are there because a lot of people there for mental health reasons. And there's some people who really do belong in a prison with mental health issues because of the severe safety risks that they pose to themselves and others. And that's the only place that they're going to be able to be kept where we're not putting other people at risk. But there's so many others who are not in that position, and we just don't have the resources for them. So they're right. They're going back onto the streets. They're being released back to their homes because we don't have the resources. And this is a place where the state has got to spend a lot of time and a lot of money. We've got a lot of needs in the state, and we know that the budget is getting tighter this year and probably next. But good mental health infrastructure is going to pay dividends over time because of the pressure that people with poor mental health is creating. People going into our schools, people going to work environments where they're harming others because they're not well. This has to be a community-based solution too. What will make sense in Tooele might not make sense in Davis County. I know in Washington County, they've opened a receiving center, which helps law enforcement deal with people who are in a crisis state, because a deputy, shouldn't have to navigate dealing with a person who's having a massive mental break. They need to have a resource to go to, but that receiving center is supporting a lot of areas, and so that means you have to drive far away. So making these resources accessible and closer to our communities is really important. And again, that's an issue that the Attorney General can and should lead out on, because it impacts our law enforcement, it impacts our officers, it impacts our community, it impacts our prosecutors, it impacts our schools, it impacts everybody. And now, I will say that the fact that mental health has declined while our social media use has inclined, I don't think is accidental.
What?
My kids are not allowed to have social media. My
Mine
daughter
neither.
asks every week, well, what if I just have real? And like in our house, we've made a decision that that's not what we're going to do. I think every parent should get to choose because they know their kid best.
For social media, you got to buy her some of the old school stationery, like where it came in the little thing and had pen holders. And
Yeah.
here you go, social media.
Go ahead and post that.
You can write a
Confer
letter.
with our friends.
Use it. Give him a backup. My kids aren't allowed either. And I told them right away when they didn't even care about it. I'm like, you're going to hate me someday for it. You're going to be angry when you're 18. You decide. But I'll buy them a stack of Post-its. You guys feel free to post whatever you want anywhere in the house.
That's hilarious. I'm going to use that. I'm like, but Mom, it teaches kids that everything they're doing that everyone should see, like they are the center of a universe.
Yes.
And, oh, well, I hate to break it to you, but you're
Making
not.
narcissists. And it also makes them so that they question their value at every turn, everything they
turn.
do.
It kind of messes with your head. Like, oh, I didn't
Yes.
get enough likes. Oh, her hair and her body are better. Like, it's not good. And then you look at the stuff that Instagram is trying to sell me. I've been duped into buying, questionable dresses that I shouldn't have ordered, and turns out they weren't at all what they said they were on
Guilty.
Instagram. Yeah, I'm
If
like,
they even show up.
yeah. So,
Or
and I'm
miracle
a
things.
45-year-old woman making those choices. I certainly don't want my 13-year-old being marketed to. Like, I don't want her being marketed makeup and perfume and bikinis and all of
It
that.
tells
Like,
her she's not enough
Well,
without it.
And just and to boil it all down, I don't want a 13-year-old to witness something that puts such a high value on sexuality.
correct.
I want
That's
that 13-year-old to build their value on, I want them to build that foundational value on the type of person they are in real life, how they perform at school, and how they perform in their
In-person
church,
relationships.
in their home, and not how do I perform when strangers just look at me.
Yep.
I've also been guilty of going further and saying, I think that any type of pornography site online, which smartphones and stuff give them a direct conduit to that.
My God, yes.
I'm like, if it's going to be, I'm ready for someone to write a bill that says if it has any sort of pornography that shows, nudity or sex acts or any of that, I don't want to ban it. What I want it to do is every single one has to have .porn at the end of it, so that
That's
a child cannot accidentally.
Dan,
because I just saw an ad come
The only
up.
problem is every 13-year-old boy will have .porn, so it
But
pops
then
after everything.
As a mother, I can block that.
You can block it on their
my
phone and their computer.
And so that's easy. And then my child isn't sitting there watching a YouTube video and this horrendous video comes up of pornography, that it would have to have that domain. I don't know how possible it is in your legal mind, but I would love to explore that, because I think so many kids, even though they're not looking for it, it finds them.
It finds them.
And it's by design.
Yes.
I have to ask I have to ask my kids pretty regularly, has anyone shown you naked pictures yet?
Right.
And because it's like 90% of kids by 8th grade have been exposed to pornography.
Yeah.
It's upsetting. I never thought of that, Holly. That's a good idea. I don't know where that would go or the legal basis, because I hadn't thought of that, but it would be so nice.
When I was a kid,
it might have to be on the national scale.
When I was a kid,
to
see pornography, we had to earn it. I mean, there was usually a shed out in the wood, and it was on water-soaked paper. Nowadays,
you had to get your older brother to go buy you dirty magazines or something. Yeah.
No, we wouldn't even dare do that. No, it was usually
you had to find one in some garbage,
stolen from a kid whose dad was abusing too much alcohol at any certain time. I mean, it was like a whole crazy thing. But nowadays, it is everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's in your kids' bedroom.
It needs to be
if
controlled.
it's attached to a device.
From what I understand, this newest batch of kids, and I don't know if they're mature enough for them to measure it yet.
It's 6. Can you stay with us a little bit over?
Yeah, I'm totally fine.
Because I don't want to say goodbye.
You guys keep this up. It's a great show. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. The call screener has to go, but you guys call right on going.
Too late for you guys to call in, but no. From what I understand, this newest batch.
Dwayne.
Yes, thank you, Dwayne.
Thanks, Dwayne.
This newest batch of kids is a little more conservative, and especially I think, I'm hoping that the signs point to this sexualized narcissistic age is starting to be broken naturally, as things do. What I worry about is that we're going to end up with like a Maoist revolution out of everyone, where everyone wears the same gray uniform and has the same haircut. But I've heard that is something that that's kind of coming up naturally. But I do believe that when Utah made it they made it so that you had to have that age verification to go on those certain sites. I thought that was an excellent idea. And I thought it was hilarious that that site punished Utah specifically. But you look at the numbers. Utah copied Louisiana. And by Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, and one other state doing it, that one site lost something like 15% of their revenue just by those 4 states doing it. And they're trying to say, oh, it's because those states are so cloistered that they're all perverts. But yeah, I think it's that just that little effect made everyone think, wait a second, what am I doing here?
And
I think it was nationwide. Everyone, the adults that were using it, or even teenagers, because I don't think it took a bite out of their teenage use. I think it's when adults said, oh, I'm being creepy right now. I think adults said, I'm going to stop.
Well, it just makes common sense that you have to prove you are who you are.
100%.
I want to get to Fred's comment about there are hardly any state hospital beds for Tooele to send people to. It takes a district court judge order after several months of pushing. Then it takes months to get an open bed. We used to have an insane asylum in the U.S., but they mostly got closed. Those closings pushed the mentally ill onto the streets and into the jails. And I know that from doing town halls out here with our county prosecutor, Scott Broadhead, and our Sheriff Wimmer, that these are real issues. And then from personal experience dealing with someone mentally ill, and I have no relief, no justice to help me as a victim. And the whole time, that all takes money, of course. But we also have to have somebody championing a fix here. And, we hear about all these other bills and we're worried about the mental health of our children, as we should be. And the mental health of, when you have a bad economy and you have a bad housing crisis, homelessness goes up. And when you have, mental illness going through kids who are struggling with their identities and all of that, they're runaways and things like that. We have to figure out how legally we can help counties and financially smart. I mean, I hear, we hear legislators talk about how much money Utah saved and how much money Utah's earned and the tax cuts. I know that Democrats, independents would probably feel pretty okay to not get a tax cut if it meant having a place for our law enforcement to bring people who are mentally ill. They're not criminals by nature. They just could be dangerous because the illness isn't getting handled. So I hope that is something that maybe your office would consider, because you were working then with the cities and towns.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was an issue that came up.
All the time. And trying to figure out whose job it is to provide those services and where are we going to put them. It's still a hot issue.
It's a tough one, and there's still an open scar from when they started getting closed down. It was the initiation of closing them down was done during
Reagan?
Kennedy. Kennedy kicked that off. His sister, I don't know if anyone knows the story of his sister.
No.
Quick history lesson. She was a young lady of kind of ill repute. She liked the boys a lot, so her old man had her lobotomized. Her dad lobotomized her.
Which sister?
I don't know.
I do remember this.
I'll just make up a name. But anyway, so Kennedy did not like him. So him and a lot of his compatriots kind of moved forward a bill to get him closed down. But of course, if you got a really complicated bill, how do you make it work? You put it way out in the future and you do it slowly. So through the 70s, still kind of rough. But through the late 70s and into the early 80s, when they closed them down, they became nightmares because they defunded them but kept them open. There was one in New York.
Nightmares because there was no oversight. And
there was one in New York that you can go look up pictures of right now, and it will give you the chills. It looks like a Nazi concentration camp.
Oh my gosh!
The abuses. People laying dead in beds covered, and the beds are lined up, frame to frame.
This is off the rails.
But
Let's
that's
talk
why I'm
about
saying opening one up.
Well, you did say political head trauma.
Hitler.
This is and I know Holly hates it when I tell a history story, but opening one up, this is still in living memory. That'll be a fight.
But
Yeah.
for Tooele County, just being promised funding that never comes, and we've got a new jail, and the jail is run like our sheriff is doing such incredible things, and he's got this incredible staff, and it's been a long journey to make sure we're paying fair wages and that the beds are getting utilized, and then through COVID. But it's the mentally ill that are the biggest issue, because we don't have accommodations for homelessness out here. It's growing. The issue is growing and growing. We, slowly private organizations are doing something. We have Valley Mental Health out here, but I don't think we have beds. And hospitals, private hospitals don't want them. So I think that somebody with your background, understanding how the cities and towns work, understanding how funding works, and then legalese and all that stuff, and then how working with legislature, maybe, no pressure, just solve that problem, would you?
I would, if I can say something, I would rather this be dealt privately. I'd rather it be dealt privately, and I'd rather it be something where maybe a public-private partnership, but we've also got to, the most important thing is we have to have it so we have buy-in and support of the families of the afflicted.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if we make it just a prison system,
That's not going to work.
It will either become a boondoggle, it'll be abused by the state, because you won't always be the AG.
But if you only do it entirely private without actual government involvement, then you lose oversight, and that's where abuse can happen too.
That is
So
true.
You can't afford it, or
right.
it's being used to make money. Yeah.
I think we need the afflicted families buy-in is the most important part. We need to have them figure that out. I mean, the ideal way to stop this is fostering strong families. That's the ideal way, because strong families with schizophrenic kids take care of that kid. They're the managing system for that kid, even if it's hard on them, whatever, but they become the managing system, and it keeps the kid out of the system. But if we build a mental health institution, we're building a complex that we don't know the levels that it's going to be needed. So it might sit empty half the time, or it might be overflow. It's hard where the family's the smallest unit to take care of that.
But most of these needs come after this person has broken the law, and they've been through law enforcement, and they've been through the courts. And that's when these things come into play. Because there's institutions you can take your kids to now, but they're so expensive that you have to have great insurance and all of that. And then even there, you're not guaranteed your kid will be fixed. But then your issue comes is when they've involved law enforcement and all of that. So I'm sorry to get you into the weeds like this, but this is something we've really thought a lot about, especially with the youth and where they're going. I mean, we've got to find a way to help them and also protect society, because we can love them. We can love them so much, and we can do everything. But even some kids with schizophrenia become a danger, not only to themselves, but to their own family.
To their communities. I know. Schizophrenia is probably the hardest one.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they end up being a victim too. They end up being
of a trauma,
a horrible victim all the time.
So, Rachel, tell us your website name so we can show it up there.
I've already got it pulled up.
Great.
So
let's
it's
show it.
RachelForUtah.com. That's a way people can learn more about me, and they can donate. And I am having on February 7th, we're doing a delegate training. We want to make sure that people really understand and feel comfortable coming and participating in the caucus system. And I'll share that link with you, so you can share it with your listeners.
We'll be doing a caucus training ourselves 2 weeks prior.
And perfect.
I don't, since I've been chair, I never let petitions in any of our caucus meetings. I think it just, why would you, why would you bring the knife that's going to kill you? But that is so neat. It's so neat that you're doing a caucus training. People, and we keep telling them this with candidates, if you can't afford to give her money, give her your time.
Give her your time. And the best thing I can ask from people is go to your caucus, be a state delegate, come get to know me and see if I'm the right person, if I've earned your vote. And that's the thing. I mean, I need money to run my campaign. I had no idea how expensive it is. So that's a fun education. And I've been a public attorney for 10 years. So it's, I am having to rely on others to support me. I cannot self-fund, but people being willing, if they can't donate, being willing to show up to the caucus, being willing to be a state delegate is the best thing that they can do to support me. So I am really grateful that you had me on your show today. This has been a ton of fun. And I am really I'm coming out to the Lincoln Day dinner in Tooele.
Fantastic.
I'm excited for that. I can't wait for the Tooele convention, but I'm also going to come out before then because I think you have a wonderful county and wonderful communities and want to participate and get to know them.
Well, and I'm happy. I'm going to try to get you a meeting where we can get some delegates out. 3 times. I want to get you in front of delegates 3 times. You will be able to speak at county convention. All the candidates will. We want to make sure that the delegates are getting to know our state candidates, even though the county. I wanted to make sure and recognize Heather Lester. She's commented it's one thing. So Heather says working front lines with resources and homelessness and housing in conjunction with mental health. It's so huge. And Fred, our deputy from corrections, and he said, when I started working in the jail, I had no idea how much of my job would involve bodily fluids from the mentally
that's a
ill.
real thing. It's a real thing.
Bless
you, Fred.
Yeah. Heather says it's one thing to have a place, and it's another thing to actually have the triage that determines if they meet that standard of care to where they qualify under the rule that says mentally incapacitated or mentally ill. That's the disconnect. And mental, Fred says mental illness is an easier challenge than homelessness, even though they're interwoven. Heather is amazing. And like you, she's out and about getting engaged. And so I'm really lucky to have her. Thank you for tuning in, Heather. We'll have you out, and
great.
I'm in touch with your folks. We'd love to have it on the show again. If there's something that you want.
This is so fun. This is so fun.
I think I've told your people that contact me, but I want to tell you right now, if there's something that you want me to share on the GOP pages, I extend that offer to any of our candidates. I want to be the one who gives people over information. I want you to be so informed in races that you can't stand it. So if you are doing an event nearby, I will advertise events here in the county. But if you're going to be, I know Davis, you've got 2 Lincoln Day dinners on the same day.
Same day. So, but I'm still coming. I'm still coming to Tooele.
Well, and we
have the best one. I mean,
I wish we don't have a lot of venue choices like you do, but ours is still pretty cool.
I hear it's awesome. I can't wait.
We have, if you have something, if you guys just send me a picture with your text inside on my phone, I can get it up and out, and we'll share it here on our show. Our goal here is to educate folks, inspire folks, and empower folks. That's what we want. And I love that you jumped in this race.
Thank you.
It's awesome and probably terrifying at the same time.
Both of those. Very much both of those.
Exhausting because you have to campaign to the entire state.
Yes.
And so grassroots funding, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you get, I worked it when Mike Lee first ran, and raising money for Mike Lee, and people thought, well, they'll never win. Well, the delegates showed him that he did. And a lot of us had to open our wallets and help out and knock on doors. But you have an impact. And if you do choose a candidate, even if it's $20 and a yard sign in your yard, once the candidate's getting some legs, but knocking on doors, calling people you like and that trust you, get behind them, because your time is just as valuable to them, because she's one person. And so people that are working with her then make her able to do far more.
That's
so
right.
I appreciate that you put your hat in the ring. I know we could talk about way more.
I could talk with you guys all day long. and eventually you're going to be like, please go away. But I just want to say this has been so fun. I love that you are providing a platform to share information with people. You're not just sitting in your house, shaking your fist at the TV, and you are getting involved. You're active. You're
doing that also.
Community. Well, I mean, you do that too. I mean, we all do, right?
We just love it. We like to be informed, but we also like to get to know the people. You know, we can watch you on the news or in a commercial, but just having a conversation and asking you questions, you have no idea what they're going to be. And most times neither do we. We just ask. It's a nice way to get to know candidates. And we are growing. We are part of Main Street Media Utah group, and we are very excited about the reach that we're getting. And so
awesome.
we appreciate you joining us. And her website, again,
it's rachelforutah.com.
rachelforutah.com.
Go on there, research some more if you want to donate, help out, volunteer,
Give me a call.
find out more. Yeah.
My number's on there, so give me a call, and I want to hear what matters to people. I'm spending time. Campaigning feels like me talking a lot, but I really want to hear from people. It's like, what's going on in your community?
Yeah. Well, who harvested that antelope up over your shoulder?
And I'm glad you called it an antelope, because that's what we call it, but apparently it's a pronghorn. His name is Gonzalez, and my husband shot that. We got a fish. There's a deer. There's an elk. There's a swan. There's a wolverine. They're all in here. There's a buffalo in the entranceway. There's a ton of deer and elk heads in the garage.
Love that? Or do you be like, I look at those, my dad used to have a whole room full, and I'm like, dust. There's so much dust.
So what we have negotiated is there are places where they can be hung and places they cannot be hung. So that's how we're navigating it.
My girlfriend, she changed my layout around. But
hey, Rachel, I wanted to say Tooele County really, really cares about federal lands. We really, really care about that issue. And we want to be, I think Utah has the potential to be energy independent if we use our own resources.
Yes, but when we do it, when
we
kick the feds out, let's make sure we still keep public lands. Write those controls in for hunters like me and your husband.
And protect our parks.
Because I want to see Kennecott restricted to, you can only fence off what you use. Stop fencing off the top of the okers, you dirty savages.
Yeah. Okay, you are a hunter then. Yes. You and my husband could talk all kinds of public lands and hunting.
Yeah.
That's what I love, is that the environmentalists don't realize that the best environmentalists are actually the hunters, because they're the ones who are using the land and want to make sure it's kept pristine so that they can go hunting. Yeah.
Well, and so that the animals are good and healthy and fed and not starving. And
what can you do about our Department of Wildlife, Fish and Game? Can you
literally it's 20 after?
I know, but can you tell them to quit being retarded?
We don't use that.
We don't use that word anymore.
For them, it applies.
No. Okay, Rachel.
Now Molly's got to rein you in.
I know, but they messed up hunting in this great state.
You know what?
There's a joke about Utah Fish and Game. You go in and you ask for a camel permit, and they say, "We don't have camel permits." Well, you sell me deer permits, and we don't have those either.
Okay, you gonna be okay?
No.
Do you need a timeout?
Maybe.
Good Canada almost made it through our whole little interview.
We can cut this off in post. It's okay.
This part off.
We'll cut it off in post, but federal lands happens to be the number one issue that everybody brings up when they're in these meetings: water, resources, things like that. Yep. The rights to water.
It's the ability to prosper as a state.
And a county.
Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. If we don't have those, then what are we doing?
Yep.
And your number one job is to protect that.
That's right. That's my job.
So we'd also like to see you maybe proclaim or get to the bottom of the fact: is Utah a sanctuary state? Are we just a sanctuary city?
We are not a sanctuary state. Some federal entities said, "Oh, they're nice. They're sanctuary." We're like, "No, we're not. We're nice." When we have legal immigrants, we treat them very well. This state is so open and welcoming to refugees that I think, which are brought in legally. And I think there's a misunderstanding that means we don't care about following the laws for immigration. And
that's usually what the church is kind of sponsoring refugees
right.
over the past. And so there's a sponsor, there's responsibility and accountability, and it's legal method. So, but I think Salt Lake City has said they're a sanctuary city. Because somebody keeps getting it messed up. I would love to see it on the books in writing, whatever it is. So
I think that's fair. Well, you
I
guys
can't wait to have you out again, and
would love it. I'll solve all the problems. I'll solve.
I know.
Everyone, Rachel for Utah, Rachel for Utah.com. Also, if you just scroll into the show notes right now, there's a hot link right to it. You can just go click that. It'll take you right there. Have a look. Check her out. Thank you very much.
Enjoy your weekend, Rachel.
It's been a
awesome. Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Have a good one.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.